put on a billionaire at Commerce. Well, that's because this guy knows how to make money, folks. I'd like to put on a guy that failed all his life, but we don't want that, do we? We are going to appoint Mad Dog Mattis as our Secretary of Defense. But we're not announcing it till Monday, so don't tell anybody. They say he's the closest thing to General George Patton that we have, and it's about time.
Well, it was a rowdy event last night in Ohio. Some teleprompter, some ad-lib, as you could see there, and the announcement of his nominee for Pentagon, retired General James Mattis. At the Trump Tower today, Senator David Perdue from Georgia, retired Admiral Jay Cohen, former Defense Secretary Bob Gates, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, John Bolton, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, who's up for Secretary of State, we know, Senator Heidi Heitkamp, Democrat from North Dakota, and David Malpass, president of NCEMA Global, economic advisor to Donald Trump. But perhaps the thing that caught most attention today was a phone call that was read out in the list of phone calls late this afternoon, and that was a phone call between the president-elect and the president of Taiwan. During the discussion, they noted the close economic, political, and security ties exist between Taiwan and the United States. President-elect Trump also congratulated President Tsai on becoming president of Taiwan earlier this year. Well, there's a big dust-up there because U.S. leaders don't usually talk to the Taiwanese leaders because of sensitivity with China and what that means for the Asian geopolitical situation. Let's bring in our panel. Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for The Hill. Leslie Marshall, syndicated talk radio host and syndicated columnist. Charles Krauthammer. You know, there's a sensitivity here, obviously, Charles, in a non-political correct, say what you say. Most people would look at this and say you're making too much of it. But in the State Department world, their hair was on fire, probably.
And in the Chinese world. The Chinese are extremely sensitive about these nuances in diplomacy. They've been at it for 4,000 years, and the rules were laid down by Kissinger and Nixon when they made the opening. And it was that we would be allies of Taiwan, but we would have to observe certain rules so that we would not be contradicting the notion that we and the Chinese agreed on at the time, that Taiwan is part of China. And once you have communications between the president of the U.S. direct with the president of Taiwan, then you are impinging on that. And it wouldn't really matter. I mean, this is politically correct, except for the fact that the Chinese, when they get upset, can do things like take over an island here or there, or tear up an agreement, or start threatening, or do other things that could cause a crisis. So I don't think this is going to cause one, but when he ascends to office, Trump is going to have to be briefed on stuff like this, particularly in the Middle East, where there's a code language where if you say the wrong word, which is ordinary language, like even-handed, it has a meaning which is not the normal meaning in normal discourse, and it could cause a real diplomatic rupture.
We saw a readout of a call with the Pakistani Prime Minister, Leslie, that was really surreal. It kind of went into all the things the president-elect told the Pakistanis in detail. So this part of it, as he's waiting to choose Secretary of State, is an important part for this president-elect.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, some of you know and some of you don't. I've lived in Pakistan. I know a lot about Pakistan. I know certainly about this prime minister who's not numero uno for that country. And a lot of people that I know in Pakistan said, wait a minute, I thought he's banning us and anybody from our country, yet he's praising us, the people of our country, and our prime minister. I think to Charles' point, and this goes with Pakistan, with Taiwan, there are a certain set of rules in place in our government for any president, regardless of their party. And many of them are not written rules necessarily. And President-elect Trump doesn't play by rules. And he's going to have to change that to a degree because it could end up being very dangerous when you're talking about countries like Pakistan. And like Charles said, I would agree 100% when you're talking about Middle Eastern nations.
Here's what he said about Mitt Romney, former GOP nominee, who's under consideration for the Secretary of State, and his meeting with President Obama.
He's been very gracious, and don't forget, I hit Mitt pretty hard also, I mean, before the fact, and so I understand how it all works, but he's been very, very nice. We had dinner the other night. It was great. There was actually a good chemistry. It was a really good chemistry with him and also with President Obama. There was an amazing, we were supposed to sit down for 10 minutes, and we ended up sitting down for about an hour and a half, keeping everybody waiting. But we had a great talk, and so I don't know, but we'll see what happens. We're going to pick our Secretary of State. We have some other announcements coming up literally very soon.
One of them, of course, made at the rally that night, last night. Here's the possible Secretary of State as we see them right now. It could expand, obviously, Jonathan, beyond this. Some word about looking beyond this, but Mitt Romney, Rudy Giuliani, Senator Bob Corker, David Petraeus, and John Bolton, who was at Trump Tower today.
Yeah, and I don't think it was any secret why Reince Priebus was at that dinner. He's one of the few, to my knowledge, unless there's others who aren't outing themselves, who actually supports putting Mitt Romney in there. And this is why it's such a fascinating decision, because really, if you go from Steve Bannon to Kellyann Conway, work your way around Trump's inner circle, none of them are supportive of Mitt Romney. And it's really Pence in a very hedged way, and Reince in a slightly more full-throated way supporting him. So if Donald Trump does this, he really would be making an incredibly sort of unilateral, out-there decision.
Yeah. Meantime, as you look back at the campaign, there was this event where campaign managers came together, and it got a little heated between the Trump campaign, Kellyann Conway, and the Hillary Clinton campaign, Jennifer Palmieri. Take a listen.
Do you think I ran a campaign where white supremacists had a platform? Are you going to look me in the face and tell me that?
It did. Kellyann
really?
did.
Oh, and that's how you lost?
It did.
Do you think you could have just had a decent message for the white working class voters? Do you think this woman who has nothing in common with anybody...
I'm not saying that's why you won, but that's the kind of campaign that was run.
Over 200 counties that President Obama won and Donald Trump just won. You think that's because of what you just said or because people aren't ready for a woman president? Really? How about it's Hillary Clinton? She doesn't connect with people. How about they have nothing in common with her? How about you had no economic message?
It was like that for a long time, Charles, and there did seem to be a bit of a disconnect with what the Clinton folks thought the problem was.
Well, look, every time liberals lose, they accuse the other side of all kinds of isms. That's been going on for 50 years, and at a certain point, they run out of steam. You can argue that, yes, there were times when Trump might have allowed sort of going beyond the bounds of what is tolerable in political speech, but to attribute the loss to racism or an appeal to white supremacy, I think is ridiculous. She didn't even show up in Wisconsin. She lost Wisconsin. There were layers and layers of mistakes that she made, and in the end, the reason she lost is she had nothing to say. She was running because it was her turn. There was no way. Remember from one of the internal messages that were leaked on WikiLeaks, someone said, "What is our message?" This is from inside the campaign. So, I mean, she would like to blame it on the basket of deplorables. I don't think that's going to hold up. Yes, you can launch a criticism of some of the things that were happening on the edges of the campaign, but it does not account for the outcome.
Well, so this dust-up comes as the party is trying to find itself, the Democratic Party. You have Keith Ellison, who looks like he's having some troubles here as far possibly the head of the DNC. Howard Dean drops out. A lot of shakeup happening.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm a Democrat, and I will gladly say we're a hot mess right now, and we need to get ourselves together, and I hope it doesn't take us 6 years like it did last time around. The problem is, you know, looking at the reality and the facts, and you can't discount what the numbers say. And the numbers say certain people didn't vote, African Americans, the youth, the Bernie or bust people. Certain people, our candidate did not visit Wisconsin and didn't listen to Bill Clinton when he said, don't forget about this disenfranchised white working class voters. Going forward, and I have to say that I'm not very popular in my group with this. I thought maybe it was time for a change for our party. And I say that because I'm from California, Nancy Pelosi's from California. When you have been a leader and your party's lost the White House, you didn't get the gain in the Senate that you thought you would have in the majority, and you've lost seats within the minority in the House, maybe it's time to take another look. Why not have somebody from a Rust Belt state? So we're very divided. We're divided on where we need to go and how we need to get there, how left of left we want to be.
And how much the party wants to cooperate with President Trump.